Former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters was recently sentenced to 9 years for election interference in the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Peters was a local elections official who became something of a hero to election deniers following the 2020 election. She was prosecuted for facilitating a voting system data breach scheme that was inspired by the persistent false claims manufactured and promoted by Donald Trump that fraud had somehow altered the 2020 presidential outcome. That was, by the way, an election loss that Donald Trump and his team had anticipated and conspired to address in advance of the 2020 election. More on that at the video right here. In fact, the conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 election is one of the many charges for which Donald Trump sought legal immunity in the landmark Supreme Court case aptly named Trump versus the United States. More on that in the video here. Back to the sad and somewhat tragic case of Tina Peters, who, as it turns out, is just one of many pawns sacrificed in Donald Trump's maniacal efforts to hold on to power. Owing to the fact that Ms. Peters believed the lies promoted by Donald Trump and his co-conspirators, she agreed to allow a man to misuse a security card in order to gain access to and steal data from one of Mesa County's Dominion voting machines. Here is some of what the judge had to say at the sentencing of Tina Peters.
But to get to the point of what it is that you did here, it's my impression distinctly that you never took your job of clerking particularly seriously. You didn't complete the certification. One scandal after another followed you in your time as the clerk. And ultimately, it was a belief that the echo chamber in which you live couldn't be wrong, among other things, that led you to do what you did here. This thought process, unfortunately, seems to consume so many in our country, regardless of race, gender, political affiliation, or the like, that what it is we hear and think can't possibly be wrong. There are many things in my mind that are crystal clear about this case. You are no hero, you abused your position, and you're a charlatan who used and is still using your prior position in office to peddle a snake oil that's been proven to be junk time and time again. In your world, it's all about you. But at bottom, this case was about your corrupt conduct and how no one is above the law. No one in this country has absolute power. Your position as a clerk and recorder, a constitutional position, does not provide you with a means by which to do your own investigation, to not listen to the judiciary, to not listen to the executives higher than you, to not listen to the legislature who sets the law as it may be. This is nonsense. Our system of government can't function when people in government think that somehow, some way, the power they've been given is absolute in all respects. And that's where you fell. You have no respect for the checks and balances of government. You have no respect for this court. You have no respect for law enforcement. And you do not have respect for your fellow colleagues when you were a clerk and recorder who weren't lockstep in your beliefs. Period. You have no qualms with violating the court's orders because you're innocent, because you didn't do anything wrong. You were just doing your job. You have no problem trying to kick an officer. Your explanation about what happened is preposterous. It's on video. You have no problem lying to officers. It's happened multiple times. They're recorded conversations. It's just more lies. No objective person believes them. No, at the end of the day, you cared about the jets, the podcasts, and the people fawning over you. You abdicated your position as a servant to the Constitution, and you chose you over all else. Yes, you are a charlatan, and you cannot help but lie as easy it is for you to breathe. You betrayed your oath for no one other than you. And this is what makes Ms. Peters such a danger to our community. It's the position she held that has provided her the pulpit from which she can preach these lies. The undermining of our democratic process, the undermining of the belief and confidence in our election systems. It's not about questioning it. No one says you can't question, you can't ask. It's completely different. And if you don't understand that distinction, then there's nothing I can say or do here today that will change your mind.
Now, I don't wish to make light of this situation at all. This woman seems to suffer from, at the very least, a number of psychiatric complexes that might make her more vulnerable to scams and conspiracy theories. However, I do want to point out that this is definitely a situation where some critical thinking could have saved this woman a great deal of misery. We live in an age of con artists. We are bombarded by scams every day. They come at us over email, text messages, by phone, by mail. They even knock at our doors. So we all have to be extremely prudent before we act on any claims that we hear. And as I have said before, it doesn't generally take very long to fact-check and debunk false information. Primarily, it simply requires that one be open to the possibility that the information they are hearing is false. Now, the situation we currently have in the United States is particularly dangerous because we have a man who is arguably the biggest con artist the world has ever known, and he has set his sights on the White House. So you know a lot of people, like Tina Peters, are going to get caught in the crossfire. As another example, dozens of the 84 fake electors who signed false electoral certificates claiming that Donald Trump won the 2020 election now face prosecution. As yet another example, hundreds of the people who participated in the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th have been prosecuted, convicted, and hundreds of those people have received jail terms for acting upon the false statements that Donald Trump peddled and continues to peddle because he simply cannot accept the clear and simple fact that he lost an election. You know, it's worth pointing out that someone loses every election, and I'm quite sure they're not happy about it. But they concede, they congratulate the winner, and they move on because they know that democracy is more important than their personal aspirations. So please, ladies and gentlemen, whoever you are, wherever you are, and whatever role you may play in society, please take a moment to think before you fall victim to a con man, especially a self-absorbed, narcissistic, pathological con artist who simply cannot stand to lose.